For several years in the 90s, the Jesuits would have this tagline on our vocation promotion materials. What's in your heart? What's in your heart? And it would show a Jesuit who was both a priest and a physician, or a scholastic, someone studying for the priesthood, who was also a teacher, or a Jesuit brother who was not a priest, but was also a lawyer. You get the point. The common theme of these vocation promotion materials is that we all come from wherever it is that we come, different walks of life. Different things had brought all of us to the society of Jesus, and we do different things in the society of Jesus. But the fundamental question, that which is most important, that which is at the root of all things, is what's in your heart? What's in your heart? Because if what's in your heart is Jesus, and that is primary, then everything else falls into the order in which they're supposed to be. As a Jesuit, whether you're a priest or a scholastic or as a brother, whether you're a teacher or a pastor or a missionary or a canon lawyer, whether you're a cradle Catholic or you've only recently found your relationship with the Lord, what matters is what's in your heart. That's a common bond. That's what was supposed to unite us as Jesuits, as friends in the Lord. In my two previous jobs, or two previous occasions, when I was vocation promoter for the Jesuits, it was a question I would ask of anyone who would inquire about a Jesuit vocation. I was always suspicious. Those who know me would not be surprised, as I always wondered why people would want to do this. And people came for all sorts of reasons, which they were sorting out, trying to figure out if God was calling them to this life. And if they could articulate what was in their heart, that was always a good first step. But this is not just about religious vocations. More than anything, this is really about what we all do in our daily lives, in the hustle and bustle of getting to work, of feeding the kids, of studying for your next exam, of caring for your ailing parents, of worrying about your teenager. The 1,001 things that all of us have to worry about on a daily basis. We can lose sight of what is in our heart, of what gives us abundant joy, of what gives us great hope, of what gives us peace. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that busy lay people lose sight of what's in their heart more easily than religious do. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Because as we go through the different stages in our lives, from high school to college to young adult to raising a family to retirement, different things affect us in different ways. And there's always something new to worry about, something new to distract us, something new that screams for our attention. But that doesn't happen only during turbulent or busy times in our lives, because even in quiet, less stressful times, we can pay attention to other things, fill our consciousness with all sorts of distractions. So it never hurts to ask, in quiet times or in noisy ones, when we are at peace or when we are stressed out, it never hurts to ask, what is in my heart? Have I made space for the God who makes a claim on me? And not just a claim, the God who wants to be the primary object of my affection, who wants to occupy all of it. And yes, we push God out for all the other preoccupations, but I think God is pushy. God keeps pushing back in until we learn that keeping God at the forefront doesn't mean we don't care for or we don't worry about our families or our kids or our parents. But we have to share that space. It's learning to live with both and. Just because we are concerned about something or someone doesn't mean we let God go for that time, only to get back to God when we're supposedly ready or less stressed. No. I think the point is to have God walk with us, to have God be with us, to have God worry with us as we focus on other things. To have God in our hearts is to have God as a constant companion and the one who carries us through times when we need the most help. The reason I was thinking of this is the other day, Fiddler on the Roof was on TV. And Tevye, who spends most of the play or the movie, whatever your point of reference is, Tevye spends most of Fiddler on the Roof in conversation with God. Dear God, he would start, and go through his litany of his milk cow, or his daughters, or the trouble in the town, or the Tsar's purges. Dear God, you made many, many poor people. I realize, of course, it's no shame to be poor, but it's no great honor either. So what would have been so terrible if I had a small fortune? That sounds very familiar to a lot of people. Because if it's not a small fortune we're asking for, it's something else. An A on a test, a promotion, better weather, the guy who just cut me off on the freeway to get a nice fat ticket. But that's not necessarily having God at the center of your life either. That is longing for the things of God rather than for God's own self. Longing for the things of God rather than for God's own self. In our second reading, Paul refers to a runaway slave, Onesimus, who, having found his way to the site of Paul's imprisonment to escape punishment for a theft for which he was accused, became a Christian after hearing the gospel from Paul. Paul sends him back to Philemon, a leader in the Colossian church, so that the two might be reconciled. Paul refers to Onesimus as his heart. I am sending him, that is, my own heart, back to you. Paul cared deeply for those who had accepted the gospel from him. They were his sons and daughters. They were always in his heart. Paul, an old man, lonely, in prison, facing death, was asking the same question. What's in my heart? And there he found Jesus, who had been with him all along, and the many Gentiles who he had brought to Jesus, sons and daughters in the Lord, who he had entrusted to God's own mercy and love. That's what was in his heart. So I go back to that Jesuit tagline. What's in your heart? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you do with your weekends? How do you spend your evenings? What do you read? Whom do you know? What amazes you with joy and gratitude? What's in your heart? What's in your heart?